So let's talk about your role with CASA, what it is, and how you got involved.
Right. I currently am a board member for our local CASA group, and I was asked back in the summer if I would be interested in joining, um, and I really jumped at the opportunity. From law enforcement, from the law enforcement perspective anyway, we've seen firsthand how CASA really helps these kids that really have no fault of their own, are stuck in these situations where their parents are generally the ones that are having some sort of legal issues, and so in those, when we're investigating those types of situations, we bring in social services um, to help assess whether or not the child can should remain, if it's a safe environment for them to be in, or if we need to potentially place them elsewhere, whether that's with families or with another guardian, maybe even foster care. Um, so already being traumatized, likely under the environment at home, now you're having to uproot them, excuse me, and move them possibly to a total stranger. And CASA steps in and assigns a volunteer to uh, work closely with the child, especially through the legal system, go to court, speak on their behalf, things of that nature. Um, Almost creating that relationship so that it's somebody that they can trust. Because when the system is out there, it's scary. But if you can narrow that down to just one person, establish that one-on-one contact, build that relationship and that rapport, I find that the kids in the long run do much better. Uh, Especially, we find that a lot of these family situations are cyclical. If if nothing's done, that child will see as they're growing up what they feel is normal behavior. When we know it's not, but when they have no other guidance, no other role models or mentors, they're going to fall into that same cycle. This is an opportunity for them to see what normal relationships look like, and I think that's really beneficial. Um, Giant step to hopefully keep them from kind of falling into that behavior as they grow older.
From a law enforcement perspective, how important is it to have someone who has the child in mind, and as far as keeping them safe, but is also on a little bit of the law enforcement sides of, we need to make sure that this is the best situation for the kids.
Yes.
And as a law enforcement, you're kind of working a little bit hand in hand, I would guess.
Yes, we are, especially in the early stages with when we're working with HSS. Uh, the Obviously the child's safety is always paramount. It seems that uh, uh, social services will do as at least as much as possible try to keep the family unit together. But there becomes a point, unfortunately, in certain situations where that's just not possible. That the child's in danger. They're witnessing behaviors that are, potentially threatening to them. Whether it's drugs, alcohol, physical abuse, things of that nature, where the best thing for the child is to pull them. But that's all, I don't want to necessarily, it's a last resort, but it's certainly not the first thing we look at. And we work really closely with Child Protective Services, their unit out of HSS, where we'll go into the homes with them at times and we'll help assess. Um, the a lot of things go into play here as far as assess like well, first thing we do is what kind of crimes are we looking at that the adults are committing? Is it a situation where if they're going to go to jail, obviously we can't leave the kids home alone, so we have to do something, even if it's temporary. But we kind of have to step back and look at the overall situation. What is this perpetual drug use? Or are drugs laying around? Same thing with alcohol. Or is there signs of physical violence? Broken furniture, broken dishes, holes punched in the wall, things of that nature. That we would look for is, those are things we don't want the kids to be have access to, but we certainly don't want them to witness any of that kind of behavior, especially if any of that physical behavior might be directed at them. And a lot of times, we find these situations out by secondhand, third-hand reporters who will, call in. It could be maybe something they witnessed or they heard. The one thing about schools and kids is they are a treasure trove of information. It's a matter of kind of filtering through, okay, what is just talk, what happened or what may have happened. That's what we need to get in there and look at. But when we have also laws on the books as far as reporting requirements for school officials, for folks at the in the medical profession, they're witnessing anything, they're required to report that as well. So we have more eyes on the situation from the outside, watching for potential problems, which we never, years ago when I first started in law enforcement, we never really had that. So again, if we can get the kids out of that environment, they're going to have a much better chance to be successful, because we don't want to be in a situation where we're dealing with a child a younger child, and then without the proper guidance and direction, in 5-6 years, now we're dealing with them from the legal sense. They're out committing crimes, maybe something minor, but they tend to escalate in seriousness as they get older. So,
one thing that I've noticed about some of the interviews that I've done is there's been what I think is a really interesting number of children who were on the receiving end of a service like CASA, and now, having grown through that process, they're now volunteers on the other side.
That is awesome.
How does that look like from your guys' perspective?
Again, being new to the board, I can't speak from the CASA perspective necessarily, but from the law enforcement perspective, when you see a kid that has escaped that cycle, it's pretty amazing, because okay, they've got a shot now, as opposed to when you first see them, you may like, man, if this kid's not taken out of this situation, they're not going to have a chance. And we've seen that over and over my career. So no, it's great. Those success stories, dude, well, we just need more of them. That's it.
Funding is important for obviously everything that anybody tries to do ever.
Yes.
But why, since we're doing this radiothon specifically with CASA, what are some of the things that, as you might see, and it might be from the law enforcement side too, that CASA can help with as far as what those funds really go to? And I guess the reminder on the radio is that the fact that all of these funds generated during the radiothon aren't going out of state. They're coming right back to Seward. They're coming right back to York. They're going right back to where you want it to go.
Right. Definitely emphasize that, any donations are going to stay local for our local CASA organization. Just like so many other things, your dependence on government assistance whether that's funding through grants or different opportunities, they're drying up. And it's just not CASA, it's across the board. So CASA and similar groups need to be creative as far as funding to keep the program running. And there's overall, I'd say we do, and one of the jobs of the board is to make sure that our budget is followed, that we keep close tabs on expenditures, things of that nature, that we know that, but we have to pay for our paid staff, awesome paid staff. I mean, the program doesn't run without them. And we have some incredible folks that run our local chapters that, but there's additional funding that's needed for training. So you can't just walk into CASA office one day and say, "Hey, I want to be a CASA volunteer. Send a kid to me." I mean, no, it's a process. There's a lot of background checks. There's interviews there, to make sure that this person will be the right fit. And then if they do take them on board, there's a lot of training that goes on, and all that stuff costs money. And when we get down to it, those are the kind of things that I want people to think about when they're considering giving towards CASA. Is dollars stay local. We want our volunteers to be local. So our CASA volunteers are from this area. It's not like they're coming from Omaha or Grand Island. They're local, so they can have a local impact with the kids as well. But to just know that the expenditures are ongoing. It's not like, okay, we'll pay for this and then we're done. Right? No, unfortunately, we need that influx of funds yearly. So we really appreciate the efforts of the Radiothon. That's going to be a great opportunity for us to not only get the word out of our mission, but we also want to get the word out for folks that might be interested in being a CASA volunteer. I would definitely be a CASA volunteer, because I can't in my current position because it would be a conflict of interest. But if when I get to the point and I'm ready to retire, I certainly would consider being a CASA volunteer. And when you think there's almost, if I do the math quickly in my head, there's about 2.5 kids per CASA volunteer in Nebraska. And that gets to be quite a load, especially when you're having to take time to be with this person, not only interacting with them to establish that relationship, but when you do start going to court, and you have to be there, you're committing your time for that purpose. And if you're dealing with more than one or two kids, it can be strenuous on you as well. And we don't want people to get burned out. We don't want people to keep coming back. So the more volunteers we get, the more we can alleviate some of that, some of those numbers to where and keep them manageable. 2.5 is probably, as an average, is manageable. But again, that's just an average. There might be some volunteers that have several kids. So we certainly encourage people to reach out to their local CASA office, and if they're interested, we'd love to visit with them.
Thank you for the work of the CASA, obviously the work of the police department too, and it's good to hear, I think, how they are working hand in hand in a lot of cases to get kids in the best situation that they can be.
And when you go about it with that attitude, it's got to be for the kids, and they're our future. We need for them to be equipped with all the tools, all the opportunities that are out there for them. And CASA is just one of those, I think, important building blocks in some of these kids' lives that will make those opportunities happen.